You've heard the news. New Star Wars films are on the way. Great! But haven't we heard that before? Lucasfilm has rolled out announcements for movies before that have either been canceled or otherwise just not been made. So what makes this time different? How many of the newly announced Star Wars films will actually get made? Look, it's a valid question. We love Star Wars and we want more of it, be it animation, shows, movies, games, content that is clearly for children, all of it. And Star Wars Celebration just promised 3 newly announced movies alone. First, we have a long-awaited trip to one of Star Wars' most beloved and untouched eras, the Old Republic, helmed by director James Mangold. This one is set more than 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Dave Filoni will direct a film capping off the New Republic era, which is the story being told across The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and the Book of Boba Fett. And lastly, we have our first confirmed sequel continuation. Daisy Ridley will return as Rey in a story set 15 years after the rise of Skywalker, where she's committed to rebuilding the Jedi Order according to Luke Skywalker's wishes. Academy Award-winning director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is set to direct. The film will feature Rey as a powerful Jedi Master guided by Luke's presence, according to Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. So that is obviously also huge, as this is the furthest we've ever seen down the Star Wars timeline. Fans are already hoping to see continuations for characters like John Boyega's Finn, who had sort of a broken promise as a Force user in the sequel trilogy, along with more hope for that brand new Star Wars territory. These are legitimately really exciting. Every year at Celebration, I get a little overwhelmed with how much I love Star Wars and how great it can be, and all the new mediums and stories we have to uncover. And not actually being there this year, I still have that feeling, which is great. But I'm gonna try and hop off my Force high for a second and recall for you the projects that didn't end up happening. They were big, just like the 3 announced today, which is slightly worrisome. I mean, is there a chance we'll lose out on these 3 very exciting, interesting concepts like we did with Marvel boss Kevin Feige and Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins' projects? Quick backstory. Both these movie concepts have been floating around for a while, with Jenkins' Rogue Squadron actually announced publicly in December 2020's Disney Investor Day presentation. In a hugely personal moment, she talked about losing her father, a fighter pilot, and wanted to make the greatest fighter pilot movie ever in his honor through Rogue Squadron. And less than 2 years later, in September 2022, it was off the release schedule. Kennedy spoke to IGN about this at 2023's Star Wars Celebration.
Now, Rogue Squadron, any chance?
Rogue Squadron, that definitely is something that we still talk about. Whether it's a movie or whether it ends up being in the series space, that's definitely something.
So it's not dead, but to call this project upcoming or in production would be a big stretch. I would characterize this one as possible, though unlikely, and most certainly not the original vision Jenkins had, if she even is still attached to what Rogue Squadron ends up becoming, if it does. As for Kevin Feige, the potential for the mind credited with the massive success of the MCU being put into the Star Wars galaxy was nothing short of incredible. Michael Waldron was even attached to write it, but definitive news came to a dead standstill, and Waldron is mostly tasked with Marvel projects like Avengers Secret Wars for 2026. Again, Kathleen Kennedy addressed this to IGN.
Kevin Feige's project was something announced in the press, or I suppose fandom, but there was nothing ever got developed.
Right.
We never discussed an idea. We did, as everybody knows, Kevin's a huge Star Wars fan. And, if he did come up with something, I would be all ears, but that's never really happened. So it's not an abandoned project. It just didn't happen.
So she's not saying it's stalled, because if you never started something, it by definition can't stall. While these projects have still not seen the light of day, Kennedy insists they're not canceled. They exist, but not in the way we expect or hope, and will likely not materialize anytime in the immediate future.
Well, they haven't been shelved. Most things haven't been shelved. Development is a complicated, long-term process. Some people, we're dealing with scheduling, because obviously really talented people are working. So we don't, it's often not a shelving. It's just, is it ready? That's really what it comes down to.
So is there any guarantee that the same thing won't happen to the Old Republic, New Republic, or New Jedi Order films? Worryingly, none of the new 3 have release dates yet, and there's one more issue in the air. Well, we have 2 recent examples of Star Wars movie projects that didn't happen through Jenkins and Feige. There was encouraging news around Taika Waititi's Star Wars film as late as May 2022, with Kennedy telling Vanity Fair it was next in the project pipeline, aimed for a late 2023 release, and shortly later with Waititi himself in June 2022 saying he was trying to write it. As of a March 2023 Variety article, sources say Waititi is continuing to work on his project, which will be moved to later down the line, just not 2023. Thus far, Waititi's Star Wars project has not been acknowledged at Star Wars Celebration. We have no clue why that could be, and it's a muddled enough situation that I don't even feel comfortable speculating about what's happening with the film or not. However, when it comes to the 3 newly announced Star Wars movies, we are pretty confident they'll actually get made. All 3 have lauded directors attached that Disney and Lucasfilm have prior connections to, with Mangold and Indiana Jones, Obaid Chinoy and Ms. Marvel, and Dave Filoni, the man whose vision the entire current Star Wars slate is built around. Admittedly, Taika Waititi and Kevin Feige also have those ties, not to mention Rian Johnson, whose trilogy is also a big question mark and wasn't referenced in the presentation at Celebration. But the reasons we're confident are specific as opposed to precedent-based. Quick break, stick around for the verdict. Are the new movies really coming? More after this. The sequel trilogy follow-up already has Daisy Ridley attached to it, and the company likely would not announce her or any plot details at all were it not already in motion. It's too risky a move. The center is already carved out, Rey. The real question regarding this one is who else they can have in her orbit, be it John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Adam Driver, Kelly Marie Tran, Kerry Russell, or beyond. It deepens the story the company has been working so hard to reinforce, so this one not happening is unlikely. Personally, I need justice for Finn, and that's what's got my interest most piqued. That would be a big opportunity to correct mistakes made in the sequels. And while I know there were a lot of mistakes and that would be impossible, starting with Finn would do a lot of heavy lifting. As for Mangold's Old Republic, it would be cruel to yank the rug out from Old Republic era fans at this point, but with Star Wars eking into the neighboring High Republic era in various mediums, it seems likely the company sees potential there for building way earlier than the Skywalker saga. I don't need to say it, but there's a whole aesthetic there that isn't all that merged out. There's so much room creatively for James Mangold and potentially others to come to build around. And speaking of Mangold, look at what he's done with Wolverine and Logan, and now we have an unprecedented 5th Indiana Jones movie from him about to come out. This shows a lot of confidence in Indiana Jones chiefly, but Mangold has the talent, and I'm inclined to believe in him. Plus, come on, Darth Revan, Bastila Shan, let's do this thing. And lastly, there's Dave Filoni. According to Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni's New Republic era movie is something they've been working toward for almost a decade. It wasn't an overnight thing. It tracks. Filoni is someone who demands confidence because he's earned it over the course of several years and several projects. The Mandalorian is an absolute keystone to Star Wars present and very, very popular. This is as close to an Avengers movie Star Wars is likely to ever get, with the confluence of The Mandalorian and Grogu, with their nexus of characters, Ahsoka, the crew of the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels, and probably Thrawn, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, and possibly more surprises. This is also the best shot right now at a huge smash hit. It would be truly ridiculous at this point to let a Filoni project die, because I have it on good authority, Disney likes to make money. And with Jenkins, Feige, Waititi, Johnson, Benioff and Weiss, Lindelof, Trank, and whomever other director who's been rumored to have a movie not currently slated, Disney is going to need to be focused and targeted and tight on what they officially breathe life into. Moving forward, they can't keep announcing films that don't come out. It's too reputationally harmful and not conducive to multi-day celebratory events around Star Wars. But what do you think? Will these films eventually make it to the big screen, and are you excited for them? Sound off down in the comments, and thanks for watching. And for more from Star Wars Celebration, here's our full interview with Kathleen Kennedy. So make sure to check that out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.
We want to tell resonating stories that really speak to what Star Wars is. I don't want it, and none of us want it, to become like everything else. And that's the most important thing to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kathleen. That was so great.